This is the National News Desk, America's News Now. Good evening, and thank you for joining us. I'm Dee Dee Gatton. As we begin this week, a murder in Charlotte, North Carolina is sparking questions about public safety amid President Trump's crime crackdown. We have team coverage. Kayla Gaskins in Washington as lawmakers call for criminal justice reform. But first, Ryan Smith at the live desk with the latest on this horrific attack. Ryan.
Dee Dee, this horrifying crime here now sparking a firestorm of criticism here toward those local officials out of Charlotte, North Carolina. The attack captured here in newly released surveillance video, now emerging as a flashpoint, really, in a national debate over how cities are now addressing violent crime, mental health, and transit safety. The president here weighing in today.
I just give my love and hope to the family of the young woman who was stabbed in Charlotte by a madman, a lunatic. She's just sitting there. So they're evil people. We have to be able to handle that. If we don't handle that, we don't have a country.
The victim of this horrific crime, 23-year-old Irina Zarutska, fled the war in Ukraine, her family says, only to be killed in that unprovoked attack back on August 22nd. The suspect in this case, DeCarlos Brown, you see him here, now charged with first-degree murder. He has a long rap sheet. He's been arrested actually at least 14 times. He even served 5 years for robbery with a deadly weapon. Charlotte's mayor tonight acknowledged the systemic failures and announced new safety measures for transit riders. She then said this attack was a, quote, tragic failure by the courts and magistrates. She went on to say our police officers arrest people only to have them quickly released, which undermines our ability to protect our community and ensure safety.
You know, this video, as we've discussed before, beyond terrifying. This Ukrainian refugee just riding on the train when the suspect gets up with a knife and just unleashes and repeatedly stabs her. And the big question a lot of folks are saying is, why wasn't he locked up? And I know you hate the term career criminal, but as you heard me say just now, more than a dozen times we have all these mugshots showing how many times he's actually been arrested.
Yeah, I do hate the term career criminal, Jan, because to me it shows the criminal justice system has failed. But you know, in my experience, I've come to realize that some individuals will never function in society. They just won't. So they either probably need to be in prison, or if it's not that, maybe a mental institution. But you look at Brown, he had 14 arrests, and he was under orders at the time of this murder for a psych evaluation. So this murder never should have happened. He should not have been on the street.
And now there's calls to withhold federal funding for cities that do not have security on these public transit systems. In general, how can we also make sure there is protection against mentally deranged monsters like this who can just come unhinged at any time?
Yeah, there's no absolute protection from this, Jan. I always tell people, be aware. All too often you travel on the L or something like that in Chicago and you see people asleep. They're totally unaware of what's going on. If possible, carry some type of legal defense tool like pepper spray. And if all possible, travel in groups. But is there an absolute protection? Yeah. Sadly, there is not.
And you know, in this case, the suspect used a knife. You don't ever hear knife violence, and yet when someone uses a gun, you hear the term gun violence. We know it's the person, not the gun, committing the crime, and it's the person who's going to face consequences. But often after a tragedy, when a gun is involved, you hear this growing call, especially from the left, to ban, quote, assault rifles. Define an assault rifle, Jody, and what does data show us about how often those are used?
Yeah, it's sad, Jen. Whenever something bad happens, a tragedy like this, people have this, they feel compelled to do something, but they focus on the wrong thing. They focus on the tool. They focus on the actual weapon. If you talk to most of the people calling for an assault rifles ban, they couldn't even tell you what the designation AR in an AR-15 stands for. It actually stands for Armalite Rifle. That was the company that designed the M16. So what is an assault rifle? If we go back to the 1994 assault rifle ban, it had to have two of the following components: a pistol grip, a folding stock, a flash suppressor, a bayonet mount, and a grenade launcher. So do these weapons look scary? Yes. Can they be deadly in the hands of a criminal? Yes. But all firearms can do that. So I think you have to look closer at what the data actually says.
And then, quite frankly, the Second Amendment gives law-abiding American citizens the right to bear arms. And quite frankly, you say, when you look at the stats and you look at the data, AR is clearly not the issue. Tell us more about this.
Yeah, Jen, whenever I hear get rid of all the weapons, ban them in the United States, I'm always reminded of that horrible incident in 2016 in Nice, France, where basically an ice cream truck killed 86 people and injured 458. So evil is going to find a way. They're just, if it's not a weapon, it's going to be a truck. But let's look at guns in the United States. Variety of sources. We don't have a national gun registry, but let's say for sake of discussion, there's over 500 million firearms in the United States. The assault rifles, as they call it, are actually AR-15s, comprise about 30 million firearms. So that's about 6% of all the firearms. And ARs actually make up about 20 or 30% of all rifles. So now let's look at the weapons that are used in murders. This is based on 2023 FBI data, which is the last complete year. So there were over 18,000 homicides with firearms. Most of those, as you might guess, were committed by handguns. Rifles were used in 541 incidents. So that's about 2.4%. And keep in mind, that category is all rifles. And if we look back, ARs make up about 20 to 30% of rifles. So that's 541 murders with a rifle. So let's compare that to other weapons. Would you be surprised to know that hands, fists, and feet using personal weapons accounted for 665 murders, 2.9%. So if we look at the lethality of weapons, hands, fists, and feet are more lethal than rifles. And I think that's an important fact to consider. Knives used in this horrible attack on that Ukrainian woman make up about 7.1% of the murders. So clearly, ARs are not the issue when we talk about murders in the U.S.
Yeah, and as you say, evil will find a way irregardless of what is banned. All right, former head of the Chicago PD and veteran FBI special agent in charge, Jody Weiss. Great to see you, sir. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Jen. Have a great day.
You too.
Instead, failed leaders like my state's governor, tough to call him that, rail against President Trump and the Republican Party in an attempt to defend their own dangerous soft-on-crime policies. These soft-on-crime policies don't just defy common sense. They put real lives at risk. The whole world witnessed this when over the weekend a video was released of a 23-year-old woman boarding a train in Charlotte, North Carolina. Moments later, she was dead, stabbed in the throat by a random man sitting behind her who had been arrested and released more than a dozen times prior. Woke judges, DAs, and politicians run and govern on a platform that protects criminals while leaving innocent civilians to bear the consequences. It doesn't have to be this way. President Trump has made it clear that law and order works. Now is the time for the shameless so-called leaders of blue cities and states to take a page out of President Trump's playbook.
But our spirits are dampened a little bit this morning because of all the discussion about the crime, and it's not something that we can overlook. It's not something we should overlook. Whip Emmer specifically was talking about this just unspeakable tragedy, this 23-year-old Ukrainian refugee was brutally murdered in cold blood on a train in Charlotte, North Carolina. Her name is Irina Zarutska, and she was on the way home from her job at a pizzeria where she worked. She was stabbed repeatedly by a career criminal with a rap sheet a mile long. It's infuriating, it's heartbreaking, it gives you a feeling in the pit of your stomach. This young lady, Irina, survived Ukraine. She fled amid the deadliest land war in Europe since World War II. She fled to the safety, or so she thought, of the United States, just to have her life senselessly ended by someone who should have never been allowed to walk freely. This individual, DeCarlos Brown as his name, was arrested and released 14 times. Yeah, more than a dozen, 14 times. We don't have to live like this. President Trump is proving that every single day in our nation's capital. And the leader Scalise, was talking about that. Since cracking down on violent crime in the district, roughly 1,700 arrests have been made. Now, you may say that's a small portion of the population. It's just a small fraction, in fact. But somehow the city feels and is much safer. Everybody needs to think about why that is. The Trump administration and local law enforcement know that it's always in every city relatively a select few individuals who are committing most of the crimes. And that's been true in D.C. as well. They're enabled by these soft-on-crime policies that were discussed here, and even softer prosecutors and prosecutions. And criminals have relentlessly abused the public and the public spaces. We just want to say this loud and clear, and we're demonstrating it. This is not just talk, this is action. Republicans are in charge, and when Republicans are in charge, those days are over. The days of allowing soft on crime, we're not going to do it. Now, here's what is stunning to me. If you only read the New York Times, the Washington Post, or most of the other mainstream outlets, you don't know anything about Irina's heartbreaking story. For some reason, many national news outlets have refused to cover it. It's social media that has amplified the story and made everyone pay attention to it. And Axios shamelessly reported that this was, quote, fuel for the MAGA messaging battle, as if it's some sort of contrived problem. Watch the video for yourself. It's a tragedy. It's a completely avoidable tragedy that deserves the nation's attention. For now, all we can do is pray for the family, the Zarutska family, and continue our calls for the swift application of justice.